and our kids through public service who are denied the ability to earn from Social Security because we were maybe worried at one time that they were going to get filthy rich on retirement as a public school teacher. They're the ones right now who are going to be telling their kids and grandkids about this profession. And we want them to be saying positive things because we've got to attract more of the best and brightest into these classrooms and into these roles right now. So I just want to publicly say thank you and then pledge myself to having your back every single day that I'm in that office to make sure that you're doing well and future generations of teachers do well. Thank you for being here.
Same spot.
I'll be the first to admit that I get a little confused by some of these commercials going on by all the politicians. What exactly is going on with our borders, and where's your stance on all of that?
Thank you for asking. And let me lay down some context here. I neglected to introduce her when I first came in, but my wife Amy is here. Where are you, Amy? Who's Amy? And our son Henry, 11 years old. Yo, Henry. I introduced them because we live on the U.S.-Mexico border in the city of El Paso, which is connected to, we have some El Pasoans here, way to go, which is connected to Ciudad Juarez, forming the largest binational community, at least in the Western Hemisphere, maybe anywhere in the world. It's about 3 million of us who share the Rio Grande River, live in the Rocky Mountains and the Chihuahuan Desert. We're very far from the centers of power, right? In El Paso, we're closer to the state capitals of New Mexico and Arizona and Chihuahua and Colorado than we are to our own state capital. And Ciudad Juarez is in much the same position. But that mutual support that we have for one another has ensured our success, our strength, and also, I want to argue, our safety. El Paso, Texas has been ranked as one of, if not the safest city in the United States of America for most of the last 15 years. And that is not in spite of the fact that we are a city of immigrants. I would argue it is because of the fact that we are a city of immigrants. Those who have chosen us have made us stronger and safer and more successful than we would have been otherwise. Now, I want to lay that down because no one's more interested in the security of that community than those who live there. And I want to tell you, it is very safe. But I also want to acknowledge we have legitimate concerns at the border. When people are trafficking other human beings, when they are trafficking illegal drugs that can come in here, when we have people crossing and we're unaware that they're doing this in between ports of entry, that concerns me. And I think that concerns all of us. And so when people ask, you say, look, Beto understands the border, he lives there, he wants to ensure that anyone who comes to this country does so legally, that we have order and the rule of law, and that as Texans, we help to rewrite our immigration laws to reflect our values and our needs, and what is most important to us, not again as Democrats or Republicans, but as Texans. We know that there are people who want to come to this state, who will work jobs that probably your kids are not going to work. We want to make sure there's a legal path for them to do that, and a legal path for them to return to their home country if that's what they want to do. And by the way, most of them do want to do that. We want to make sure that we prioritize family reunification. And we want to guarantee that anyone who's an asylum seeker or a refugee has a legal process that they can follow to attempt to claim asylum. It's not guaranteed. They may be denied. But right now, we're forcing them to live in squalor on the streets of Mexican border communities instead of following our own laws. That's what we are for. And listen, this is what we're against. Greg Abbott, instead of providing that order right now, is causing chaos. He has deployed 10,000 members of the Guard, including from communities like this one, forcing them to leave their families, their jobs, their careers, their communities with 10 days notice for a 1-year deployment to become part of a solution in search of a problem. 4 of those Guard members in the last 5 months have taken their own lives. 2 others have died as part of this mission from accidental deaths. None of them killed by an undocumented immigrant or anything or anyone coming over the border. Unless there is a real crisis and a real demand for their service, let's allow them to come home to their communities and to their families. Let's meet this challenge not with fear or with rhetoric or stoking anxiety, but with the facts and the truth and the best leadership that we can muster here in the state of Texas. As Governor, I want to reflect that. So thank you for asking the question.
Okay, this is going to be our last question.
Thank you for running, first of all.
Thank you.
We have more than 4 million Texans that face hunger every day. We have single mothers skipping meals so they can feed their children. What are we going to do about it?
Questions about hunger. Like many of you, Amy and I and Henry volunteered at our local food bank when the pandemic started because so many of those who were typically volunteering were older, more vulnerable, were not the ones that you wanted to have congregating in a warehouse and being exposed to COVID. And so very often younger people would step forward and take their places. The lines at the food bank in El Paso stretched more than 2 miles long for people to come in and get food. And it was folks who had lost their jobs, but it was also interesting to me, folks who still have their jobs. Nurses who were in their scrubs, coming through, in that line for hours upon hours, picking up food because they could not afford it on their salaries. School teachers, people who worked at restaurants, fast food places like McDonald's, still in their uniform, having served food to others, unable to afford food for themselves. But the kicker for me is that more than 2 years after this pandemic, the demand in El Paso has actually grown, not subsided, since COVID first struck. And we know that to be the case across the state of Texas. The question was, what are we going to do about this? Well, in a state where the minimum wage is still $7.25 an hour, no one working full-time on that minimum wage can feed themselves, keep a roof over their head, and have enough to go forward every day without working a second or a third job or being on public assistance or going to one of these food pantries in our communities. We absolutely must raise that minimum wage and make sure that more people have connections to Weatherford College, to union jobs here to provide training and world-class employment. We've got to make sure, I mentioned expanding Medicaid, we are the least insured state in the country. And not only does that mean that people with diabetes, with the flu, and we know that we lost a second grade school teacher in Weatherford in 2018 who didn't have enough money to pay for her flu medication, dying of curable cancers. Not only is that, but people who try to fund their own health care out of their own pocket are going into bankruptcy and significant debt, and they're seen at those food pantries as well. So if we expand Medicaid and guarantee that more people can see a doctor without losing their home in the process, we're not only going to be a healthier, better off community, we're going to see fewer people dependent upon public assistance to move forward. These are not crazy, extremist, fringe ideas. These are not the purview of the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. These are common sense, compassionate ideas that I think most Texans can get behind. We just need to have the political will reflected in the highest office in the land. And when we win this race, we will. Thank you for asking the question. Appreciate it. So, this being the year 2022, and so much of what people know about what's going on right now is delivered on social media. If you're willing, Amy and Henry and I are going to be hanging out by this tree. We would love to snap a picture with you and then ask you to post that on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, if you are going to do a dance on TikTok. And in your own words, as you post that picture, tell folks why you came out today. It doesn't have to be anything that I said. It can be what's most important to you. But when you do that, you validate that this is possible. And you give people the permission to believe. And once that happens, there is no stopping us. And ladies and gentlemen, that's how we're going to win this race. Thank you for coming out today. Really, really appreciate it. Gracias.
Where is this?
All right, folks, we have 30 minutes to get through everybody, so unfortunately we won't do questions, but we'll do a quick picture.